What's up, everybody? I'm Chase Lee, the co-host of the Real Me and Colton, a movie podcast, and a contributing reviewer on DallasMovieScreenings.com. And I got another movie to review for you guys, and that would be The Prodigy. Now, this one comes from Orion Pictures. It's directed by Nicholas McCarthy, and this one tells the story of a mother played by Taylor Schilling, and, she has a son, and we don't really know what's wrong with him, and that's the whole tagline behind the movie. What is wrong with Miles? And so, going into, because I don't want to say much, this movie keeps it very, very tight with its mystery. Going into this movie, I saw the trailer, and it looked pretty, basic, like an average, horror movie that's going to rely on jump scares, use that instrumental violin to just kind of scratch across the screen to kind of wake you up and just make a loud sound, a loud boom to scare you, and not really use any type of effort to make it horrific or atmospheric. Just use music to scare you, or false jump scares. Either one, that's just typically what they do. So I was like, okay, at the very least, this film is going to be entertainingly bad. It could be just average and entertaining. I just want to see an entertaining horror movie. That's all I ask for with this type of movie. Now, if it's something that's kind of elevated, like maybe like a Hereditary or something, I might expect a little bit more given the fact that A24 was behind that with the cast involved and everything. So I get it. There's different types of horror movies that you kind of go into with different mindsets. So I expected the bare minimum from this one. Oh boy, I did not like this movie one bit. So the tagline is, what is wrong with Miles? It's the movie. That's what's wrong with Miles. And so if you want to start at the top and kind of work your way down to the nitty-gritty, at the very top is the script, the story of the film. Now, I kept the plot vague to you because I didn't want to ruin anything. Well, believe it or not, they kind of tell you what the movie is within the first 2 minutes. And so that kind of annoyed me on several, fronts here, to where if you tell me what the movie's about, I kind of have no problem with that. But let's evolve from that story point and grow it into something that, spins its, genre a little bit and be like, okay, so we're going to go down this route. Let's do something that we've really never seen before. Or at the bare minimum, I guess just kind of stick with that entire premise and just kind of really do nothing with it and maybe put some effort into it. Either way, I'm cool with it. But they introduce what the movie is within the first 2 minutes. And by the end of the first act, you can pretty much tell how the movie's going to end. So what it boils down to is this is a movie that takes a subgenre of horror, does nothing with it, and it almost seems pedestrian and lazy the way this film is constructed. It uses a lot of the same tropes from other horror movies. I don't have a problem with that stuff. But it's almost like beat by beat by beat, like we know what's going to happen, and it's almost exhausting and just tiresome. Like you're forced to sit through these next plot points and kind of see everything unravel when you know that's how it's going to be. So it doesn't try anything fresh, doesn't try anything unique. It's almost like it's going through the motions to get through the end of the film. And so that is a huge issue with this movie. It's just lazy. It is a lazy movie. It is different horror movies put together in the same blender, and out comes this goopy, tasteless substance. And that's what you're getting. I don't mind when other horror films, or even with other movies in general, borrow other stuff from other movies. Borrow something, be inspired by it, and build on it. This does none of that. All the films like The Exorcist or The Omen or anything with Incarnation, Insidious, and all that stuff, those movies try. And then this one, it's almost like a replica of those movies, but it doesn't want to make any effort to stand out amongst the pack. So it's just, I don't like using the lazy word because I know there's a lot of people that work really hard in this movie, but that's what this movie comes across as. It's just a lazy horror film. So with that, the film, has a pretty standard story, and it's just kind of it's whatever. But then towards the end, when it happens, I'm like, okay, we all saw this ending from a mile away. So then what it boils down to at the very end when you're done with everything is that this was a waste of time. What was the point in this? And I even said to myself, at the bare minimum, even if this movie was bad, which it is, it can still be entertaining. Find some aspects that I can kind of draw from and be like, okay, I really like what they did with that. Not so much everything else, but like maybe that, maybe like a couple things here. No, there's nothing I really even liked about this movie. So it was a colossal waste of time on everyone's effort. And it was just really sad to kind of witness. So, and on top of all that, you don't really care for anybody. You don't care about anything in the movie because the dialogue sometimes comes across as really awkward and stilted, or we have performances that don't really like come across cinematic at all. Like this felt like a really glorified TV movie, and the performances and the filmmaking show. So I guess to go down to the performances, Taylor Schilling, she's best known from being in The Orange is the New Black. I've seen a few episodes of that show. She's pretty good on that show. And she's whatever in this movie, and she's just poorly written. She makes some really questionable choices, and you're like, why would you do this, or why would you act like this when you knew this was going to happen? It's just mind-boggling to me that she would sign on to this. The husband in the movie, forget about it. That guy is awful. I didn't believe a word that came out of that man's mouth. Not a great actor. The only one that I actually really dug, and I'm going to go ahead and, because I got the IMDb page right here and pull it up real quick. Jackson Robert Scott. He plays Miles. Some of the things he says are very, kind of awkward and really kind of disturbing, not from a horror standpoint, but just more from like, why would you write this dialogue and it doesn't really come out of this kid's mouth right. He was really good in the movie to where he could switch back and forth between, something that's wrong with him. Once again, I don't want to spoil it because you gotta see this to believe it. And so when, things kind of happening to him, he changes his voice a little bit. And then when he goes back to his normal self, he's got that high pitch kind of innocence in his voice. I thought he did a pretty good job for what he had to go bouncing back and forth between what was wrong with him and then him in his normal state. So I thought overall he did pretty well. And everyone else is forgettable. I mean, it's mainly about the family. And when you have one of the parents that are bad, one of the parents that is a poorly written character with a decent performance, it's not a good core group of performances to kind of bounce off on. And that has to go with the directing. A director's main job is to get the best performances out of the actor and also tell a visionary story. This had neither. There's no vision behind this. It's visually bland. Like, this is one of those horror films where, like, they had a couple of cool shots of cinematography where I was like, okay, I see what they were going for. I see the effort put forth with the contrast of the shadows or the way it was lit, the way it was framed. Like, there were some creative juices flowing there, folks, just for a little bit. But for like 99% of the movie, it is a visually bland-looking movie to look at. A lot of the same colors running through it. It's not even on a thematic standpoint. It's just colored that way, and it doesn't even look appealing. It looks kind of gross. And so, it's either that or it's like, just a bunch of kind of overly bright scenes, and there's really no contrast in those scenes, even with the colors and everything, whether it be on the props or, costumes or anything. It's just all this kind of like basic tonal movie on a visual aesthetic, and it just doesn't look good. So there's no vision from the director, and he doesn't really get great performances out of his actors, so I think he did a pretty bad job. And then, I guess on top of all that, some of the editing transitions were a little weird. And a little weird, I mean, some of them were kind of off, almost like as if someone didn't spot these mistakes. There was even one where it cut to Taylor Schilling, and I forgot what the scene was, but it like cut to her, and she said, yeah, or something like that. It was like a really like weird, like, yeah. And it was like this kind of weird like ADR scene. And there was a couple times like that throughout the movie where like just minor little errors that you could have easily fixed with the editing and the sound design, it didn't really come across well. And for a movie that's like an hour and a half, it bored me to tears. And I thought the editing just drew the pace of this movie, just draws everything out to what seems like 2.5 hours, and that's not good. So I said, even on a basic level of entertainment, this thing should go by pretty quickly, even if it's dumb. But it doesn't even do that. And then by the end of the movie, when this final thing happens, where you know what's going to happen, because they basically just say it in the beginning of the movie, you're like, what was the whole point of that? I have no clue. I felt nothing from this movie. Like, it's even worse than like a movie that's just like an average movie. It's like a step below that. And it should have went to Netflix or Hulu or some type of streaming service. Because honestly, I think it would have been better served there. I don't know how it's going to do this weekend, but I guess we'll find out. But I'm gonna give the Prodigy a D+. I'm giving that plus only because I do like the kid. He's actually pretty good in the movie. And I can see somewhat of a decent future if he continues to act and continues to get better at it. So that's my thoughts on the Prodigy. What did you guys think of the Prodigy, or have you even heard of it? Please tell me down below why I'm wrong. You guys surprise me with the comments sometimes. So let me know what you thought of the Prodigy down below. And that will do it for this review, guys. I'm Chase Lee, and tune in next time for whatever I review next. I will see you guys later.